Our next presenter is the Texas State Director of American Atheists and an activist for rationalism in science education. Aron is known as one of the YouTube atheists and now has over 80,000 subscribers to his YouTube channel, which is dedicated to combating creationism and other forms of politicized religious extremism. I'm personally a little bit disappointed that upon knowing that Aron was speaking today, I would have no shot at the speaker with the longest hair. But that's all right, because I'm excited about what he's going to say for us now. Please welcome Aron Ra.
Hello, Ohio. I've never been to Ohio. This is my first time. Thank you. Yeah, but it could have been worse. I could have been like so many people that are in Vegas this weekend. But enough about that. See, as he said, I'm Texas State Director of American Atheists, and I have, I'm sorry to say that my state now has something in common with your state. In what was recently voted with regard to women's choice and abortions and so on. My state, despite heroic efforts by some of our populace, has followed suit with yours. And what's most disturbing about that, apart from the fact that the powers that be in my state have expressed that they have little consideration for an estimated 80% of the people that do not support the motions that they recently pushed, is that they base these decisions on the Bible. And it's funny that they should base these kind of decisions, where they say that, life begins at conception and so forth. And they want to base this on the Bible because, in fact, the Bible doesn't say that. The Bible is based on Hebrew traditions, which can be found in the Talmud and other sources, in which, according to the Jewish law, on which the laws of Moses are based, and interrelated, I think probably more appropriate way to say that. The Hebrew tradition is that life, or that a fetus up to 45 days is judged as only water. And that after that, a fetus is treated as a limb of the mother until birth. It is at the point of birth when the body becomes infused with the living soul, and the living soul was taken to be the breath of life, literally breathing, and the infant does not qualify as a living being until it breathes. As a matter of fact, there are Jewish texts, I believe it's in the Talmud, I can't remember exactly where, wherein it describes, when necessary, the process of partial birth abortion. And when I said that these texts also consider an infant, an unborn fetus, to be a limb of the mother, specifically, it is the thigh. And bear this in mind, because there's a couple of places where the Bible talks about, like when Jacob is wrestling God, and God touches him in the hollow of the thigh. The thigh is not referring to either of his legs. Well, at least not the ones on the sides. They're talking about the one in the middle. It's basically saying that God kicked him in the nards. And so, when you get to the Bible, and you look at the book of Numbers, chapter 5, and you read through that, you find that if a man goes out on a hunting trip and he comes home and he finds that his wife is pregnant, and he starts putting the math together and figures that he wasn't home at the point that she would have become pregnant, or might not have been, and he has some suspicions about whether or not she was cheating on him, he can take her to the priest, and the priest will perform a test on her fidelity. The test is an abortion. He mixes together a potion and enchants it, and the spell requires God's direct involvement, and so that also means that God has to condone the abortion. It, in fact, will not work without his assistance. And in this spell, it is that if she was cheating on him, then, depending on your translation, either her thigh will rot, or in some other translations that are more appropriate, it says the womb will discharge and she will be barren. And that if she was faithful, then she can continue to have children. And the implication is that if she was pregnant when she showed up, and the child were not the father's, that is an abortion, and God did it. And there's lots of other examples where you could argue something similar to that, but it's not literally or exactly an abortion except in this one passage. So why do people believe in the Bible? And why do they teach the Bible? And what I usually hear is things about family values. Except that anybody who's read the Bible comes across the family values of killing disobedient children. And we've had people in the GOP make public announcements in the last year or so that it would be a good idea to make it legal to kill disobedient children to set an example. As if the states that have the highest death rate, or that have the death penalty, don't also have the highest rates of violent crime. So obviously using the death penalty as a deterrent isn't working, especially if it's a religious state and you don't think that death is permanent. What kind of a punishment could that be? Family values where you can sell your daughter into slavery, or where you have to kill her if she was raped in the city and didn't cry out. These are not family values. These are not wisdom. These are not the words of a superior being. Why are people teaching it as though they were? And how about, let's see, morality? Nowhere does the Bible discourage slavery, neither in the Old Testament nor the New Testament. You would think that when this country was founded, I had to wonder, why is it that they didn't then, right at the very beginning, discard slavery? Why didn't they make that one revolutionary move right at the very onset? And I have to wonder the same thing about this unchanging, superior, supreme being, that there was a condonement of slavery from the beginning, and it maintains through the New Testament, where Jesus himself tells the slaves that they have to obey. Okay, so why do people believe the Bible? How about all those fulfilled prophecies? None of which anyone's been able to present to me. There's lots of them. We just can't show you one unless you want to look at. Okay, how about the one where Isaiah said that a woman would give birth to a virgin and call him Ishmael or whatever. It wasn't the name, but they didn't call him Jesus. And this was supposed to be a prophecy leading to Jesus, except when you read the passage in question, they're not talking about Jesus. They're talking about how this event, this king, will have this fall, or he will meet his enemies by this time. A woman will have a child out of wedlock, or by this time, and that's the deadline for the event. Centuries before the birth of Jesus. It's amazing how you have to distort that prophecy in order to make it work. And then Isaiah ends up impregnating the woman in question himself just to make sure that the prophecy goes. And this is the way the Bible describes it. Now, there's another one about the city of Tyre, and it's wonderful watching apologists try to argue why the city of Tyre exists when it's not supposed to. The prophecy was that what was his name? Nebuchadnezzar, I think, was supposed to tear down the walls. He was supposed to utterly smite the city, destroy it utterly, leave it unrecognizable, a bare rock in the deep, because we're talking about an island. The city's in two parts, one on the shore, one on the island. The part on the island was supposed to be stripped to bare rock, unrecognizable, and nobody would be able to find it. It would be just a place where you would spread nets for fishermen, and they wouldn't recognize its former glory, except on Google Maps, it's still there. And it's always been there. And when it was eventually taken, it did eventually fall, but not by the king the Bible said it would. So people fall over themselves making up excuses about, well, yeah, it eventually fell. So it was a different king, and it didn't happen the way that it was described, and it's still there, and everybody knows it. And the beautiful thing is, when I read different apologists trying to defend that, and they're contradicting each other, where one group will actually say that some portion of the sea moved or the island sank or whatever, and then the others will, no, it's still there, but it kind of translates as a different way. And they contest themselves on this. So there's no prophecy that I'm aware of that anybody's able to bring up that actually shows itself to be a fulfilled prophecy. Okay, how about the wisdom of the Bible? And we're not talking about things like where pi is not a round number. We're talking about, like, there's breakthroughs in medical science. Like, they talk about how the Hebrew people back at that time knew about the cleansing abilities of running water. I think every 4-year-old knows about the cleansing abilities of running water. It's something you naturally come across. And if this is so profound, then why do they look later on at Jesus when he refuses to wash his hands and his own people are criticizing, this is the Hebrew law, you're supposed to wash his hands, and Jesus tells them, in some effective way to piss off. He's going to do what he wants to. He doesn't have to wash his hands. So where's that prophecy? Your own Lord doesn't follow it, so what good is that? But it gets better, because the breakthroughs in medical science, like how to cure leprosy, you have to include all of the 5 elements of witchcraft, and you have to do a blood sacrifice, and you have to sprinkle the blood of a dead bird into this bowl, which then has to have running water in it. You dip a magic wand in it and use the magic wand to sprinkle the blood onto another bird, who is then let loose in the air so that you get that part of it, And that's how leprosy is cured. And I don't understand why these people aren't in hospitals with, stockpile of pigeons to cure all these people this way. But okay, so the science also considers that the earth is flat. It describes itself as such. There's this giant crystal dome with windows in it to let in the water above the firmament. That would be outer space. It talks about how the firmament is hard, and it's described it elsewhere as crystalline. The whole planet sits on pillars. It's divided 4 ways. It's a circular table with an X drawn in the middle to divide north, south, east, and west. All of this we've since discovered looking back on the planet from the moon. Doesn't look like that at all. So maybe it's salvation that is the important thing that people want to believe in the Bible. Because who wouldn't want to be trapped forever and ever and ever with an indomitable despot who can read your thoughts every minute of every day, and you better always be thinking good things. You ever see that episode of The Twilight Zone with little Anthony Fremont? You've been thinking bad thoughts. And when he does something horrible to one of your friends, you go, it's good that you did that, Anthony. It's real good. Can you imagine doing that for eternity? How bad was hell again? That's where Sagan is, right? Yeah, and Gandhi and practically everybody that you might want to meet. Somebody that might be interesting. They're all there. And look who the people are in heaven. I know. Wish me to the cornfield. My argument is, can't I just die like I'm supposed to? Like everything should. And it turns out, fortunately, that while the Bible has no credence in any aspect at all, it does at least allow that I won't go anywhere when I die. I will just cease to exist, just like everything else is supposed to. So, the theology, let's see, the serpent in the garden, everybody knows that was Satan. Except the Bible doesn't say that anywhere. Not even Revelations. It says that Satan was that old serpent, but that's the last book, and you can't imagine that it's talking about the first book, and they were written by different authors. This guy didn't know what that guy was talking about. And in the middle, you have Jesus calling the Pharisees a pit of vipers. Are they all the same guy from Genesis? Are they all Satan, and Satan was a snake that talks? Everywhere that you hear the words in the Bible, where you hear the phrase, eat of the fruit of the tree of, it's always a parable. It comes up several times throughout the Bible. Only is it taken literally in Genesis. Nowhere else. And it is clear that when you have the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, this is a parable. That's all it can be. And the fruit of the tree of eternal life, which is also mentioned in there, and is kind of enigmatic, because what would happen if Adam never ate from either tree? How does that affect the death before the fall argument? So, the idea that Satan was the serpent is not clearly expressed. And they also talk about how Satan was one of the angels who fell from the sky, because you had Isaiah talking about, Lucifer, the light bringer, right? And he is just, well, no, that was Isaiah complaining about the Babylonian astrology. And he was talking about a rebellious prince named Hillel ben Shahar, who was the son of Shahar, whose twin brother is Shalim. Together their names mean the dawn and the dusk, and they were both the sons of El. So Hillel ben Shahar, or the one that they now call Satan, was actually like the grandson of God, but it's the previous version of God, not the modern version, because they had everything juxtaposed and twisted around. So the theology doesn't make any sense either, no matter how you look at it. So it becomes an argument of absolute truth. And it doesn't matter that every other thing that they said in here is wrong. It doesn't matter that none of it is true. It's all absolute truth. In the words of theologians, and I've debated many of them, it apparently can be truth even if it is not true. And I don't understand how they've justified it that way. And I've asked them straight out, can it be truth if it is not true? And they said yes, in one sense or another. Now, my unique perspective on the subject of truth, and this is the pivotal argument that I have with religionists. When I was about 6 years old, I lived in Los Angeles, and we lived very close to a group of hippies called the Manson family. And we had actually encountered them a couple of times because we hung out in the same places. We didn't know them, but we had actually encountered them. And this, of course, was before they became famous as mass murdering cult. Now, these were people who worshipped Charles Manson as the reincarnation of Jesus Christ. And what Manson would do, he had an unprecedented and wholly unique system of mind control, where he would take these drug-addled, uneducated kids, and he would sodomize them in humiliating ways in front of the rest of the family, which he gathered around to watch. Now, the reason he did this was to deprive them of their pride, because having pride meant that you could be obstinate, that you could stand up to authority, that you might rely on your own judgment over the judgment of somebody else, that maybe you had the bravado or the guts or the integrity to follow your own decisions. But if you had no pride at all, then you would be willing to serve another master. Now, to me, if you have no pride, that means two other things that you lack. You have neither honor nor shame, because they are interrelated. And of course, if you have no honor, you will serve the other master. If you have no shame, you will do shameless acts without apology, without compunction. Now, my family was religious, but they didn't read the Bible. They didn't read the part where their own theology argued against pride, for the same reason that Manson argued against pride. Now, obviously, religious people can be very proud. Manson himself thought he was Jesus frickin' Christ, right? But it's all in the method of manipulation. That's why they want to relieve pride. They want people to be mindless minions. My family was not aware of that. My family were very proud, and I remember once at about this age, my father told me something that resonated with me in a particular way, when he told me that a man's word is his honor. And that's a carryover from the old Western mythos. And this was common at the time when I was 6 years old. Everything was cowboy movies, and so that became part of the template of the man that I wanted to become. And this is somebody that this is not like some other traditions would view honor. We're not talking about a situation where you might have to kill someone, even a family member, because they brought shame onto your own house. We're not talking about your family. We're not talking about what demographic you belong to and therefore believe that you may represent. This concerns only your own personal integrity. It is not possible to be dishonored except on your own accord. The worst anyone else can do is to question the value of your word, implying that you are not honest. And since that is a very serious charge, it shouldn't be done lightly. You should be able to prove that someone is wrong, but that's not enough. It's easy to be wrong. All of us are wrong at some time. Simply being mistaken is not the same thing as lying. You also have to show that that person knew that they were wrong and that they misrepresented the facts with deliberate intent to deceive. And if you accuse someone of lying and it turns out they're not, that's kind of like when you call checkmate in a professional tournament game and it's not checkmate. Or when you sink the 8 ball in a different hole than the one you called, you lose. Because false accusations will cost you your own credibility. Now, accuracy matters, and so does accountability. And the way I see it, a fundamentally honest person would not want to misinform others even accidentally, and they're eager to apologize when they see that they've wronged someone, even if it's not really or entirely their fault. Because they don't lie comfortably. It's like a pacifist using violence, in terms of self-defense. It's something you won't do if you don't have to. And if you love truth, you'll hate liars, and you'll likely treat liars with contempt. Cowardice, laziness, stupidity, and all these other things you may accept or tolerate in others, but not deceit. Dishonesty is dishonorable. And at the same time, people who are consistently honest also seem to be more altruistic and compassionate. And I have known people on the other side of the scale who will readily lie about any trivial thing without compunction and regardless of consequence. And I don't know how they rationalize this to justify it. They're also quick to accuse all manner of malice in someone else, but are unable to see any fault in themselves. Instead, they engage in blame shifting, projecting their own faults onto others, and anything they do wrong is somehow your fault. And they'll even blame you in the course of an apology. Because such people tend also to be indignant, self-righteous, and show less compassion for others. And these are behavioral traits that I've noticed in debating with creationists. These are the kinds of tactics that they use. Accountability does not exist, and truth, it would seem, is irrelevant. And am I running out of time?
You are.
I'm out of time? Dude, I thought this was 20 minutes. I was halfway through. Okay, well, let me summarize if I can. Just eat up one more minute. And I didn't hear the whispering there and recognize the significance of it. It really bothers me when I challenge people's beliefs and they ask me, why can't I believe what I want to believe? I mean, they'll tell me that it doesn't matter what the facts are. They're going to believe this. We're going to believe what we're going to believe. And if it doesn't matter what the facts are, then it doesn't matter what the truth is. And yes, you have a right to be wrong, as some of them argue that they do. But I have the right to correct you. Because although you have the right to be wrong, I have the right to be right. And I'm going to exercise that. And I'm sorry that I can't do the rest. I misgauged how much time it was going to take. But thank you.